All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our session of Pinpoint, this 10 o'clock Mountain Time session, where we're going to be talking about Stripe and fintech and all kinds of awesome, useful tidbits of information. I'm happy to turn the time over to Ben, and he can take it away and introduce Eric a little bit more from there.
Beautiful. Thanks, Andrew. My name is Ben Roden. I am a product marketing manager here at Smarty. I deal primarily with our address enrichment family of products, as well as kind of our fintech and finance verticals. Eric, we'll kind of get into it, but tell us just quickly what your role is and where you fit in at Stripe.
Sure. I'm a GIS professional and I'm the lead on the tax geography team at Stripe. And so I'm on the Stripe's tax product team. I I lead the team's implementation of geospatial data for all of our workflows.
Excellent. I imagine most people here know what Stripe is, but in case anybody doesn't, what is Stripe? Give us just a bird's eye view of what the company is and what you're working on.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing in introducing myself as working at Stripe, where I get the whole gambit. I have people that have no idea what Stripe is, and I'll tell them that if they've ever bought anything online, they probably use Stripe. Or I have someone who's a an adherent of Stripe, has implemented Stripe in some sort of way. So yeah, Stripe's mission is to increase the GDP of the internet. We do that by facilitating payments, mostly payments online, though we have terminal products for point of service. Just to give some scope, in 2024, we process, Stripe users generated 1.4 trillion in total payment volume. That's a scale equivalent to roughly 1.3% of the global GDP. So
Wow.
Stripe is a payments company, but we also have revenue tools. So we have billing and we have tax. We have Atlas, which helps companies incorporate. And as Stripe has matured, we have begun to offer more and more products.
Incredible. I think to some extent Stripe and Smarty are similar in that we're touching a lot of processes and sometimes people just aren't aware of it. We're a tool where it's like if we're invisible, we're doing our job. You want it to be seamless, and so would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that there is a sense of like a gas utility, an electric utility. It's like you only know that it's not working if it's not working.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you only know that it's working well after you've realized what it's like when the payments don't process. And that was, I know that a lot of people have come to Stripe because it just works. I know
Yeah.
that I've been at other organizations that have implemented Stripe because it just worked, and it works well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's definitely a no news is good news situation when you're building a utility like this. That's really, really cool. So Stripe Tax, obviously one part of this broad kind of ecosystem of products and solutions at Stripe. Where does Stripe Tax fit in? Is it sold separately? Is it plugged into the wider Stripe platform? Tell me how it kind of interacts with that ecosystem.
Yeah, Stripe Tax is part of the revenue suite. We can be implemented by ourselves. You don't even have to be using Stripe for payments, but we work best when we're incorporated with the rest of Stripe, with payments, with billing, and yeah. So it's it's been a journey. Stripe Tax as it's been in developing within the revenue suite.
Yeah. So speaking to that journey, tell me about what's kind of the key value proposition or the key problem that Stripe Tax solves for businesses. I think when people hear tax, um, there's a there's a sense of confusion and trepidation. So what are you trying to address specifically in the world of tax?
Yeah, exactly. So Stripe is a payments company, and the pattern emerged with Stripe users, our customers, saying, "Hey, did you figure out this sales tax stuff? Our growth is getting stifled because we don't know what the right sales taxes are. And when I say that sales tax, that actually is for indirect tax. So that in some countries that's GST or VAT, so sales and use tax in the United States. So as this uh, emerging trend came forward, it became clear that offering a tax compliance product would be really helpful to Stripe users and help them in their goal. You know, as if Stripe's goal is to increase the GDP of the internet, Stripe Tax's goal is to unblock uh, any tax compliance concerns and help our users to be able to be tax compliant.
Interesting. So I think it's interesting to think about tax compliance as an obstacle for growth. I think as a lot of businesses scale, this is one of those things that they kind of don't think about when they're maybe building a storefront or building a checkout, building their payments platform. And then when they move internationally or whether that, they hit a certain scale moment, it becomes a huge problem. So is that something that you've seen, tax compliance specifically being something that limits people's ability to grow or scale?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are three main patterns of it. There's analysis paralysis of like, well, we're not going to sell into that market because we're concerned about the tax compliance and we don't know that we know what we want to. So let's not sell there. Uh, or let's just not deal with it.
Yeah.
We'll deal with it later. We'll figure it out later. Someone will help us. Clearly, somehow this will be easier later. We'll find the right solution. And then it backfires when you realize that you haven't collected all the information that you needed throughout, and that you really need to be either tax compliant from the start or be in the right direction for that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, hey, you are great at selling a doodad or having or your SaaS service is
Yeah.
selling like hotcakes. That doesn't make you a tax expert.
Hmm.
And even if you are, if you want to do the DIY and become the build your own tax engine, that's what we'll call the calculation. That requires some engineering. So why bring in your A plus engineer from all the projects that they should be doing to then build out your tax compliance solution when
Yeah.
another company can do it more and have those experiences that are going to be useful.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine just based on what I know about tax code in the United States, it's something that's constantly changing. So if you do bring it in-house, you solve the problem for a specific point in time. By the time you're done with that solution, regulations have changed, districts have changed. Is that something you see internationally as well, the sort of dynamic nature of tax code?
Yes, absolutely. The rates, rules, and jurisdictions change all the time.
Yeah.
That's within the United States. So if you're just selling in the United States, that's within North America. That's within the EU. That's global.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how many countries does Stripe Tax support currently?
100 plus. There's some limitations on what we support in those, but 100
Yeah,
plus countries are supported by Stripe Tax.
that's incredible. Um, so I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the sort of magic that goes into Stripe Tax. Obviously, it's such an easy win for companies to sort of just outsource something that is so challenging and so technical. I was actually reading a blog post that you published this summer about your sort of jurisdiction resolution system, kind of how you are staying on the forefront of all of this complexity. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the system that you built and how you guys think about kind of staying up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've said a couple times, a geographer, a GIS professional. I'm working in fintech though. The reason that I popped over and my last stop was in solar development. So one of the things, and I'll start from there. One of the things in solar development that was really key was understanding which jurisdiction you were going to get the permit for your project. Well, the same rule applies for every transaction with sales tax. You need to know what jurisdiction you're in to charge the correct sales tax. You need to honor the rates and rules for that jurisdiction. In the United States, so United States alone, there's 16,000 taxing jurisdictions. Now, I say that, and that is the combination of rates, rules, and reporting that we need to keep accurate. So if you're selling from Orem, Utah, right, to give an example, into I don't know, Travis County in Texas, you need to know: are you within Austin? Are you outside of Austin? Are you in the Austin Library District? Are you in an emergency services district, or two, or three? This ends up being really hard to understand. It's really hard to understand for me, and I'm working in maps. I love maps. If my kids come over and see me looking at maps, they're really excited and intrigued. But it's really important for our users that I'm delineating the jurisdictions that are out there, and then that we have a product that is fast and accurate in determining the correct jurisdictions that a transaction sits within, and then applying the correct rates and rules for that area. So we developed the jurisdiction resolution system, and maybe Ben or Andrew can share out a link to the blog post that we put together, which was, we put this blog post together to say how we built it and all the pieces that we put into it. But the key is where, and knowing where that transaction is, so we can know what the right jurisdictions are for taxing rules.
That's incredible, dealing with that level of complexity. I know that even with address data, you run into interesting wrinkles where it's like, okay, based on the postal or geographical county, there's even discrepancies there. So, can you
Right.
talk?
We get all the time that engineers come in over the top and say, why don't we just look at zip code? Why don't we just look at the city that it's in? And I'll have to go through the examples and show that, well, postal addresses don't actually align with the boundaries of incorporated cities, and therefore
Right.
the jurisdictions that match there. One of the key examples we use in the blog post, and I use all the time, is there's Drexel, Missouri, is one of many cities in this country that actually sit within two different counties. And in the state of Missouri, you can have a different rate, a different county rate for the different counties that are in there. So if you're in Drexel, you need to know for your taxing whether you are in, I think it's Bates County, or not. And then that line in this case is actually a street. So if you are on the northern side of the street, you have one tax rate. If you're on the southern side of the street, you have a different tax rate. And that's the level of depth that we need to be able to combat. Same, if you look at the address for the northern side or the southern side of the street,
Yeah.
same city block, same zip code. So we need to know more than just the you can't do just string matching on the address elements.
Yeah. It's insane. Looking at the blog post, one of the things that was so surprising to me was you would define like a polygon, and within that polygon, there were like islands. So even within like a confined space where you think, okay, this theoretically everything in this neighborhood, say, should be part of the same tax code, there'd be an island where that polygon doesn't apply. So there's these little pockets of weirdness that I'm just so impressed that you guys have found a way to deal with it.
Right. As each city goes forward, it can annex areas outside of its current boundary, and oftentimes there's like orderly annexation zones that can say like, well, we're going to annex this area eventually.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that every house on the street is annexed at the same time. And so, yeah, those city boundaries across the United States change, and they don't change in necessarily logical ways, and they absolutely don't change in ways that are captured by addressing the
Yeah.
addresses.
Yeah. That's insane. Talk about specifically what problems the good address data solves. In other words, like what is the value of your partnership with Smarty in regards to this jurisdiction resolution system?
Right. So having good address data is key to making sure that we are going to have the right tax calculation, right? So knowing this address sits at this location, therefore it is within this set of jurisdictions. Really easy to say, right? But
Yeah.
once you get into the details of actually, well, the accuracy of all the systems have to be matching. I remember when I was in like GIS 101, the resolution of your data is only as good as the resolution of the lowest resolution data set. So if you have
Yeah.
low resolution data, well, that just proliferates throughout the whole system. So if we have the just bang on like survey grade delineations of all of the jurisdictions in the United States in the world, it wouldn't matter if our addressing data didn't match up to that. If it was only going to a zip code centroid, then we would never be using that data. So
Yeah.
having good address data that is we're able to get fast, accurately, is key to being able to know what the taxing jurisdictions are.
Mm, that makes sense. So yeah, you're only as good as your least granular data set, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah, and we need to, and I think that's having everything work in concert together as well is really important. You could come up with a solution where we're going through the back door for some areas, or we're going through a side door for others, and not using address data all the time, and
Yeah.
that just ends up adding really hard pieces for managing everything.
Interesting.
Not to throw a wrench in your flow, I do have a question, again, as how it ties, uh, coming back to some of the things that Jonathan Oliver talked about in the previous session. So you talked about seamless things working together and how Smarty is easy to like integrate or whatever. But have you at Stripe had concerns with using cloud-based tools? One of the things most of us experience in the last year are massive outages from AWS or other tools. Is is there concern, especially with something as important as tax law, with cloud based services?
Yeah, I think there's always a concern of
The answer is
anything going down, right? So we've had to build in backups, um, we've had to build in for that eventuality that it will go down. I think that's what Jo said pretty well, is it will go down. And I am a pessimist, so I do assume that we need to build to assume that things will go down. And so we've built in backups. But I think that one of the things in working with Stripe working with Smarty that has been great is that when we found an issue, we've been able to raise it, and Smarty has been great about working with us to identify the problem and get us back online.
awesome. Thanks. Sorry for the interruption. I just thought came to me. If there's anybody that should be worried about a drop, I would think it would be a financial services company. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Wow, yeah. There's so much to think about. I know that you guys have developed sort of a specific methodology for defining location that's called spot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, as I go into in the blog post, a Stripe place of taxation. So that's a unique combination of taxing jurisdictions. So if you're in, I'll be tested on my Utah geography here. So if you're in the US, you're in the state of Utah, you are in the county of Utah, correct? In Orem.
Yeah. Yep, Utah County, good for you.
And then you are in the city of Orem. And then you may potentially, I can't remember off the top of my head, if there's a special purpose district. But that series of jurisdictions, US, Utah, Utah County, and Orem. Those define a unique set of jurisdictions. So what we've done, part of what we've done, so we're not, imagine that at runtime, we're saying, oh, we have to check each one of those individually. Like, what state is it? Okay, we're in this state. If we were doing this geospatial analysis, that would be really expensive to do, expensive in time, expensive in computing resources. So instead, we simplify everything into these spots ahead of time. So we know we maintain our taxing rules in accordance with these spots instead of each one of those individual taxing jurisdictions. And really, more importantly, types of taxing jurisdictions is where it can get really hard and really confusing.
Interesting. Talk more about the types. Certain
Well,
content.
so yeah, so I guess I didn't give the huge spiel about taxes at the beginning of this, but in the U.S., bless our federalist system, it says that each state can define the sales tax rules and laws. So I grew up in the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire has no sales tax. There you go, easy. But then in the state of Utah, you can have the state is able to then say like, okay, well, a county can have its own rate and set some of its rates and rules, and then a city can have its own rates and rules, and then there are these things called districts, special purpose districts that can have their own rates and rules. So that could be a transit district. They collect a say 0.25% rate on any sales in that transit district's area to help to support the transit district. Or in a state like Texas, there are emergency services districts. So you want an ambulance, or if you come into your house, or an ambulance district. If you want the ambulance to come to your house and you're an unincorporated area of a county, well, you're in this emergency services district. To support that, you pay a little bit extra, 0.25% on your sales tax. And then we monitor this. So there are compliance rules for everybody that we then are able to monitor.
Man, that's crazy. So in addition to all the sort of geospatial information that defines the spot, you have the actual tax type tied into that as well. And you have to
Right. There are tax types that are wrapped into that implicitly, and then there are also we have a really great research team
yeah.
who's able to maintain all of these rates and rules and understand there are things like tax holidays, there are discounts, there are product definitions that end up having slight different variations of rules that guide tax compliance. Like one of the examples that I'll give is that in like I think it's New York City, a bagel, if it is toasted, it's one thing. If it is untoasted, it is different. So that will inform the tax implications. Yep. And there's a lot of different products that we have to support.
That's so interesting.
Is that the team that's going to pull their hair out when they learn about Utah City that's inside of Utah County, inside the state of Utah?
Well, no, this the engineer who gets confused and said, well, they said that it was in Utah, right? And it's like, was it Utah City, Utah County, Utah State? Right.
Yes, all three.
Those yeah, those questions come up all the time of like, the best is when it's a county and a city that have the same name. It's like, well, they were applying 1% and it's like, well, but what about the city that actually has a 2.5% rate?
That's crazy.
So confusing.
It's super interesting. Like when a lot of the challenges that we have with data are working in localities where there is less infrastructure or less mature infrastructure. It's interesting with tax code, you have a challenge on the other end where in the US it is so mature and so like fully developed that complexity comes with challenges. Like it's not lacking information or lacking definition, it's the overabundance of those definitions that makes it so crazy for you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only getting more complex
Yeah.
as time is going on, and that's in every single angle. Every single
Oh,
angle
yeah.
is getting more complex. Not only is it we're getting more jurisdictions. So, states that have they call it a local option tax typically, where a city can opt to then collect an additional amount of sales tax. A lot of cities are opting in to be able to bridge some of their funding gaps. And then I was giving you an example of the emergency services districts. Like if you're in an unincorporated area and you're not close, well, the best vehicle for then changing whether or not you have services is to implement a little sales tax to support these services. And we're seeing that geographically of more jurisdictions. We're seeing that in terms of the rates and rules. I mentioned sales tax holidays where we have to suspend for one day all of the tax calculations in a set of jurisdictions because they have a sales tax holiday that says you don't collect sales tax on this day
Yeah.
in these jurisdictions. Okay.
It's obviously super challenging, but does it feel nice, like sort of like, hey, this is job security? The idea that as this complexity increases, Stripe tax becomes more valuable, where it's like you're the hole that people would have to dig into gets deeper and deeper. So the value that Stripe provides just gets greater and greater as you are kind of shouldering all of this complexity.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Though, like I said, I'm a geographer first, and now I'm a sales
Yeah.
tax geographer second. So I love
Yeah.
applying to a new. I like that it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting geospatial problem. I can plop it on the map, so it's fun. But yes, I mean, I think that most of the people that I work with, they see this as a challenge, and the challenge goes right back to the Stripe tax mission of we want to unblock this for our users. We don't want your great idea to be stymied by the complexity of sales tax. And there are a lot of ways that you could be stymied, right? And
Yeah.
this is it does feel good to be able to say, okay, hey, and to see some of the users that we have being able to get the speed to value because we're unblocking them from the burdens of tax compliance, and
Yeah.
then they're able to expand. The ones that were blocked and said, I don't want to go into this market because I'm worried about tax compliance. Well, hey, if they are a user and they're able to then do that, it's great to see them expand.
Totally. I think there's this sort of initial hurdle of, okay, I have to really deal with tax for the first time. I think there's another hurdle that happens when people enter a new market, like you say. Tell me about what trends are you seeing internationally? And I guess my question is that same level of increasing complexity appearing in international markets to the extent that it is in the US?
Yes, absolutely. It's not just the U.S. where things are getting um, more complex. It's getting more complex internationally too. And I know that we have recently approached by the Australian tax office. We were approached. Stripe Tax was approached to talk to us, learn about the space. Like, how are other countries doing it? What are the trends that we're seeing? What are the tools that are out there? It was great to be. We are subject matter experts in the Stripe Tax team. We also attended a roundtable with the EU commissioner that was trying to discuss some of the upcoming VAT reforms. These complexities are out there, and even some of the organizations that are putting in the rules don't know how complex they're making it, and
Yeah.
trying to figure out the best way. I understand it's a revenue generating tool for governments, but let's make it so that everybody can not feel like that's a blocker.
Yeah. I know that, so we attended Stripe sessions earlier this year. We've been to some other fintech events. It seems like some of the big talking points are stablecoin, cross-border payments, of course, AI. Are these things that obviously there will be knock-on effects, but are these things that are going to affect your like Stripe tax specifically?
Yeah, they of course they will. I mean, it goes back to that complexity piece. I think that where AI fits in this as a product is still not clearly defined, and we're still working really heavily on determining how to manage the taxability of AI tools, and then also how to ensure that AI tools used, especially in this space, are doing so correctly and accurately.
Mm,
Uh, on the stable coins and cross-border payments, I think that um, the tax fundamentals aren't changing.
mm.
So those are payment methods, and so we're just continuing to try to be compliant and work with the regulators as they decide how to regulate.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sort of seems like your mission remains like, how do we get taxes out of the way? No matter what happens, how can we, again, absorb that complexity, shoulder the brunt so that people can grow without tax being an impediment?
Yeah, I'm glad
Yes,
you reworded
absolutely.
that. I thought for a second you're like, what if we just made taxes go away?
Pretty popular. That's a platform you could run on. Interesting.
Yeah, and I understand. I understand taxes are necessary. So I want to make sure that we don't want someone to be surprised
Yeah,
by what their tax compliance burden was. And there is a lot of fear in the space of people not really fully understanding the rules and trying to, but being subject matter experts, being able to provide a product that helps our users is key.
absolutely. It's a great mission. Luckily, the tax organizations are usually pretty forgiving if you don't get it right, right? So you have a lot of leeway.
I'm not touching that one.
Excellent. Well, Eric, this has been fantastic. We probably have a couple minutes. If anyone has questions, you're seeing anything come through, Andrew?
No questions other than can Eric just do my taxes for me? I know we're getting close to that, so probably not. Eric, you're gonna do other people's tax?
Me personally, no. But if you want to investigate Stripe tax, I would suggest it.
Good. That's a eat your own dog food statement. That's great. I'm glad we can push that. So yeah, visit Stripe. There's a question here from John. Are the taxes on a service generally based on where the business is located or where the users are located?
Uh, that is up to each state, each transaction, and it's part of the complexity of the tax calculation when we make it each time. There are what's called origin-based states that say where the transaction originated is where we're applying the taxes. There are destination-based states where the destination of the good or service is where the tax is determined, and each state is different. And
Part of that
our
complexity.
yeah, it's part of the complexity, and our tax engine is able to manages those rules to determine are we applying the taxes the origin or the destination. So it is a mix.
Okay, great. Another question from Derek. I'm curious why you originally got interested in geography. Is it purely because you just got excited looking at a map, or what is it that got you into geography?
I did. Sometimes I'll say that it's probably a progression of things, but I remember in like classes in like first through third grade I love the days when the map was just left out behind the teacher and just looking at it, looking at the boundaries between those different countries and saying, well, why is there a boundary there? Wonder why that boundary is there, and why is that name looks so different than the ones around it.
Mhm.
Um, and then being fascinated when I'd spot differences. Like one of the key ones, I don't know if everybody remembers the all those maps in like the 80s to the 90s. There's a big change of like, oh, there's Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia is gone. There's Czechoslovakia, which people still use. It's funny. It's like an age-defining thing. Czechoslovakia doesn't exist. There's Czech Republic and Slovakia. So I loved that really early on. And then my high school had human geography, and I took that, and that primed me to take geography in college. And then that was my marketable skill out of college, and so I've been a geographer ever since. But I think the number of maps up in my house like always out to me as like being map curious and liking geography.
I like that.
That's awesome.
This is a very dumb question, but I hope you have an answer to it. Do you have a favorite country or state based on shape? Is there like a shape that just really does it for you?
Don't say Colorado or Wyoming.
Yeah, really. No, there's not one that has a great shape. I mean, I think that um, I always like to use. I'll say that I like as example states. I have a few that work really well. Anyone, especially if I'm making a slide deck or something, if I want text and then I have, so that's why Utah was used in the blog post as the examples because it lends itself very easily to
Yeah, nice and
being
angular.
an example. But yeah, I mean New Hampshire, Vermont, those are great. Those are great shapes. Idaho, I guess, as well is in that same shape category.
Idaho, I guess. I want to put that in a quotes channel or something.
Excellent. Well, cool. I don't see any other questions coming in. Eric, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate your
Absolutely.
and we love working with Stripe. Anything else you want to share before we call this conversation closed for now?
No, I mean I'd suggest reading the blog post if you link on it, if you find that link. There's also the Stripe annual letter. If you want to know more about Stripe, you can find that, and potentially we can send out a link. Take a look at Stripe tax and the docs if you're curious, and reach out to me if you have any questions.
Yep. So again, you can reach out to Eric. You can reach out to him directly through the Pinpoint thing, or you can send him an email. I'm sure or connect with him on LinkedIn. There's so many ways to connect with people. It's just we don't do it very much. Thank you, Eric, again so much for coming, and thank you, Ben, for your time in preparing for this session. And we will see you guys at the top of the hour at the next session.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.